Welcome to Creator's Head Studio. I'm Tom Arcu, feature film producer, director, screenwriter, and novelist.
And I'm John Colton, creator of ColtonComics.com and writer of Paul Bunyan versus Dracula.
James Bond and Amazon. What a mess. And many people are talking about what can be done or what horror can happen because now we've got Suits running the show. And you had something fantastic, John,
This could be the best thing that ever happened to James Bond.
that Amazon
And
takes over and that the
right,
Broccoli's are
right.
gone.
I,
Okay.
I think they bought the rights for $1 billion,
Okay.
which is good money if you can get it.
Yeah.
And
Yes. Okay.
but there have been a lot of people who are James Bond fans
Yes, of
and
course.
directors even.
Hmm.
And my first inclination was, they're one phone call away
Ah,
from having a hit franchise and possibly Bond bigger than it's ever been.
excellent. What is
And
this?
and the one phone call would be to Christopher Nolan
The
because,
one behind the trilogy of Batman. Sure.
well, he had interest in directing a Bond movie. He had even pitched a script that he had done a rough version of.
Hmm.
He had discussions with Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson,
Yes.
and nothing came out of it.
Right.
And
And
so,
Quentin Tarantino also.
yeah, my understanding is he wanted to do Casino Royale
Uh-huh.
set in the 60s
Oh, okay.
and kind of do a noir style 60s Bond.
Got it.
And, like that sounds amazing.
Okay.
The other names that came up were Steven Spielberg,
Hmm.
who, again, I think he met with Albert Broccoli back in the
Gotcha.
day, and Broccoli said no. The other
Hmm.
one was James Cameron.
Yeah.
And, which you can really see between James Cameron and Christopher Nolan,
Right.
they've kind of made the best spy movies of the last 20 years. And, obviously I'm thinking of True Lies. Arnold Schwarzenegger starred in the best Bond movie in the last 2 decades and
Okay.
or 3 decades now. But the
Okay.
the other one is Tenet,
Hmm.
which read like a spy movie, and Inception.
Right.
And
Both by
so,
Christopher Nolan. Yes.
yeah, so imagine the buzz
Hmm.
if
Yes.
these four directors who had been told no,
Right.
Amazon said yes to.
Exactly.
And they said these are the guys that are going to do the next four Bond movies.
I'm in.
All of a sudden, there's a new fascination and interest in the James Bond franchise. And
Exactly.
we all can't wait to see what the next one looks like.
Right.
You do one press conference with these four directors
Yes.
and say they are taking the helm of James Bond for the next four movies.
Right.
And that's just going to be news. It's going to be news everywhere. It'll be water cooler talk,
Right.
even for the non-movie fans.
Hmm.
You say, "Oh yeah, the guy who directed Terminator 2 and True Lies is doing the next Bond
Titanic
movie."
and Avatar. Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, people will know who he is quickly, even if they're not like a big movie fan.
Hmm.
They'll get excited about it.
Right. Exactly. Now, Hollywood is a business that needs ideas. As your screenwriting partner is something that I'm just amazed at your ideas. And there's a particular idea, Paul Bunyan versus Dracula. And so I've got a couple questions for you. We have the launch, and therefore we want to make sure that people know what's great about Paul Bunyan versus Dracula. It seems like really opposite things. You got Paul Bunyan, grand hero of folklore, and you've got Dracula, gothic horror. You throw them together. How do you make that work?
It was really just a question of themes and finding the character motivation.
Ah,
And you're right. How do you make it work? Because my first idea for it was a little bit like Godzilla versus Bambi,
hmm,
because, Paul
ah,
Bunyan of lore is
mhm.
100 stories tall.
Wow.
And it wouldn't have been much of a fight at all.
Right.
So I had to scale him down,
Hmm.
and I realized, like for a comic book, I still had a problem
Okay.
because when they're fighting, it looks like David and Goliath.
Hmm.
And so I had to kind of figure out the characters.
Right.
And I thought of something, a story that I heard from Shaquille O'Neal.
Hmm.
And he was talking about how growing up, his mom was always telling him not to bully the other kids,
Okay.
not to push them,
Hmm.
not to be so aggressive because somebody else could get hurt.
Hmm.
And you see that with a lot of big guys,
Hmm.
the gentle giant kind of becomes a cliche for a reason
Hmm.
because it happens so often. Once I factored in that Paul Bunyan probably had that kind of upbringing,
Hmm.
it was just a question of giving him the motivation to break out of his shell
Ah.
and to kind of unleash himself
Ah.
and what would cause that to happen.
Right.
In this story, Dracula is kind of a bully
Hmm.
and he bullies Paul Bunyan physically, psychologically,
Hmm.
emotionally.
He threatens somebody
But
that Paul Bunyan cares about.
yeah, and he threatens everyone that Paul Bunyan cares about.
There it is.
And yeah, when the climax comes up, I think the audience is going to be just about ready to see Paul Bunyan unshackled and to see the villain get his comeuppance.
Gotcha.
Um,
But it also sounds like that because you're making Dracula so powerful that people who appreciate Dracula, they're going to come in and get something good, something that they want. I always think about what is the audience buying? What is it that they came for? And so to have both powerful figures, one of folklore, one of gothic horror, tangle, well then you've got something that's extraordinary.
I had a friend who pushed me to not just write Dracula as the monster
Good.
and to go a little deeper. And I feel like I found a place where the audience is going to understand his motivations.
Excellent.
Like he's still evil,
Hmm.
he's still a force of nature,
Right.
but you understand why.
Right.
And you realize that he has his motivations. And from his point of view, he's doing what's best.
Which is fantastic. Now, I taught graduate students and college students at Academy of Art University from the original Bram Stoker's Dracula. And when you actually look at the original text, you can see that what's fantastic about with a villain-like character is that your reader, even back in long ago when it actually came out, they get to take a walk on the wild side. They get to go someplace with a character that is so amazingly powerful, so amazingly seductive. But if they get a
Yeah.
comeuppance at the end, it's okay. We got a chance to take a walk on the wild side, but everything is right with the world again, kind of thing. So that's great. You unleash people to have a great time in a fantasy setting. And considering what many of us put up with in our regular workaday world, man, we need some fantasy. So often with iconic characters, we surround them with really good other characters to give a full experience. Are there some other characters in this project that you feel round out the experience?
There's a couple of lead characters. There's one who Woodrow is a cowboy
Mm-hmm.
because when I was rereading Dracula before starting this book,
Uh-huh.
it occurred to me that Dracula is a little bit of a Western.
Oh.
And it's got cowboys, it's got gunplay,
Mm.
it's got the corruption of the world
Ah.
that the good people are trying to overtake. Moving forward, we also see Dracula in his first gunfight.
Oh.
The other character is the female lead,
Mm-hmm.
which is Molly Martinez.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a big fan of Dracula, you might notice some things going on with the name there. Might be a
Easter
little bit
egg.
of an Easter egg. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that she was three-dimensional
Excellent.
and believable
Yes.
and not a damsel in distress,
Mm-hmm.
but also not unrealistic, just to make her interesting,
Mm-hmm.
dynamic, but also someone we care about. I spent as much time on the writing and the art and working with Flavio and making sure that the pages were as impressive as could be.
Got it.
And I think it's something that is good enough that when you read it for a second or third time,
Hmm.
you're going to notice things you didn't notice on the first read through.
Gotcha. That's when you have a good work of art, that it has layers and it has things to discover, and it was so well crafted that there's so much to it.
It's launching this week on Indiegogo,
Hmm.
and you can click the link below, go
Yes.
check it out. And for those who buy $100 of physical product,
Hmm.
you will get a original sketch card, and you'll see them there on the page.
Ah.
And because we like to celebrate comic books and all things comic books, you probably know who Frank Miller is.
Hmm.
He's the creator of The Dark Knight Returns.
I taught The Dark Knight Returns at Academy of Art University, so
Okay,
it's
yeah,
so classic. It must be in a class
right.
about comics. So.
He's the creator of Sin City, and in this case, this is a little nod to 300.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be drawing these sketch cards, 300 of them, each one with one of the Spartans. It's black, white, and red.
Hmm.
And if you're one of the first 300 buyers
Hmm.
of $100 of physical product, you also get a sketch card as part of your package.
How great!
And,
How
and
great!
that's original art, just celebrating comic books
Hmm.
and Frank Miller a little bit.
Excellent. And the big idea here is that the book's done. The book is 52 pages, and it's not a situation where you have any bit of worry that will it come around in 6 months? Will it come around in a year? No, it's done. So you're basically funding the printing, and then out goes the product to all the glorious collectors of excellent work.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was intentional that if I was promising something, I could 100% deliver.
Exactly.
And
And speaking of deliver, I'm going to pull this all together. So, how do you deliver a good James Bond franchise? You get four people who have already done some work on James Bond. As you mentioned, we've got James Cameron, Quentin Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, and James
Steven
Cameron.
Spielberg.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's a heck of a one to forget.
Yeah, well, what can I tell you? Okay. One of my
Yeah,
favorite films of all time is Jaws. So, okay, we're good. We're good. All right.
yeah.
And just they're one call away. Call them up and say, hey, you get to make the film your way. And all we have to do is have you four people agree on the casting of the new James Bond. It's doable.
Yeah, yeah, you basically could give them carte blanche and hey, whatever you guys want to do, we're gonna put it out there for you. They all have amazing track records. You have nothing to lose, and
Right.
they'd be stupid not to ask.
Right.
At least make the phone call, have the meeting,
Yes.
see if they still want to do it, because why not?
Yeah. And definitely lots of reasons to make something extraordinary. And so, speaking of extraordinary, we are so grateful that you're with us. We are growing. And as I tend to mention, one of our team members always likes to say, show the merchandise, Creator's Edge. And so, be with us next time. And remember to like, subscribe, comment below. We'd love to see what you have to say. And do you think that would work? Do you think that James Bond can be saved if Amazon follows this great idea from John? Or maybe you have another idea. Please comment below. Catch you next time.
Yeah, thank you.